titled Taking Charge of Your Health, and that is the title of my talk today. It's an 8-week, it's a 12-week series, as we've heard. It's going to be on Wednesdays at this time. And for those of you who know maybe somebody who won't be able to attend the series in person, they can listen, as we've mentioned, afterwards online on YouTube. But also there are some study guides that you can use to go through some of the principles that we'll be learning today. And I'd suggest and advise you to go through this, log in online and go through those study guides. There's also a little questionnaire at the end of each study that just helps you to remember some of the concepts that we'll cover. I'll go into a little bit more detail than what's on the study guide, just because we've got a little bit more time to do that today. So our first lesson today is taking charge of your health, and we're going to be reviewing 8 basic principles of good health. So to start off with, what is good health? So good health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. It's being able to have the energy to do the activities that are assigned to us every single day, to have a good sense of enjoyment in those activities, and having a good social connections with others in our communities. Often, sorry, let me just go to our next slide. Sorry, okay. So who is responsible for our health? So many of us think that it's our doctors or other medical practitioners, but actually we are the ones who are responsible for our own health, because we are the ones who have our bodies. With health, all of us inherit a set of genes, and these genes contain the DNA and information that is passed on from our parents and from their parents. Sometimes these genes can code various diseases or predispositions to illness. But we know, and as we study as we go along, that actually our genes do not control all of the aspects of our health. And there are some things that our lifestyle influences when it comes to our health. And doctors are important, and medical practitioners are important, but their role is more in the early detection of illness and making sure there are no conditions in our lives that can cause serious disease. So when we want to make good health choices, we need good information. We need to know about how our body functions, which is called physiology. We also need to know what causes disease and what can be done to prevent the disease. And when we have this information, and that's quite a lot of information to take in, we can make good choices about our health. Thomas Edison, the man who, invented or worked on the light bulb that we know now, made the statement about health and the role of medical doctors. It says, "The doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will instruct his patient in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of diseases." So this is our aim today, to learn some of these principles. So in the past, the most common illnesses that we had were caused by infectious diseases. So things like pneumonia, diarrhea, and other similar illnesses. But over time, as we've had now antibiotics, we've got advanced medical treatments, the more common diseases that we see now are what are called non-communicable diseases. So diseases that are not that you don't get from infection, but are a result of either old age or our lifestyles. And many of these diseases that you see here on the screen in the past were associated with old age, but now we're seeing that these diseases are in younger people. So for example, heart disease, cardiovascular diseases, so heart attacks, high blood pressure, diabetes, even cancer we know is a very common cause of illness. Dementia, stroke, lung diseases as well, and unfortunately suicide. And some studies are showing that up to 70 to 80% of the diseases are caused or related to lifestyle factors. And a study that was done by the American Heart Association identified 7 factors that they felt that if people followed these, they would lead to a healthier life. And what were those? Not smoking, not being overweight. In their definition of being very active, that's having 20 minutes of exercise a day. Eating healthier, that's lots of fruit and vegetables. Having a normal level of cholesterol, normal blood pressure, and normal blood sugar. And when they did a study of about 2,000 people, just to see how many people actually meet these criteria, they only found that about one in 2,000 met all the recommendations. Maybe about 70–80% of the people had 1 or 2, but they were not meeting those 7 recommendations. So crystallizing it a little bit, actually. So taking out of those 7, some of the most important that they think can help us to prevent chronic diseases are not smoking, not being obese, getting about half an hour of exercise a day, eating healthier, that is consuming more fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and less meat. And when they looked at these 4 factors, they noticed that if somebody does each of these regularly, they can actually reduce their chronic disease risk by about 78%. But if you manage to do all 4 of them, then you can reduce your risk, for example, of diabetes by more than 90%, your heart attack risk, reducing that by about 80%, and halving your stroke risk and your cancer risk. And we know there's some particular cancers in the body, so like colon cancer, that having lifestyle factors can contribute about to 71% of the cases. So it can actually be prevented by some of these simple diet and lifestyle changes. And this was a statement by Dennis Burkitt. So Dennis Burkitt was an Irish surgeon who served in Africa. And he said that the concept that modern killer diseases are lifestyle related and therefore potentially preventable and reversible is the most important medical discovery of the 20th century. Dennis Burkitt, there is a ward, if you've ever worked at St. James's Hospital, there's a Burkitt's ward there, and he discovered lymphoma, but also lots of other relations between the dietary intake of people who were living in Africa at the time that he was working there, and comparing that to some of the diseases that he found in Europe and at the time, and finding that there was a very strong link between diet and lifestyle and the occurrence of the diseases that were seen in different countries at the time. So today I'm just going to share have a whistle-stop tour of 8 principles or 8 areas of our health in which can contribute to better and improved health. And some of these are covered by the 7 that I'd mentioned earlier, and there's a few extra. And studies have shown that where people have followed these 8 principles and the guidelines that are suggested in those 8 principles, they can live up to 10, 11, 12 years longer than the populations who do not follow those principles. So I'll go through those quickly. Some of them are going to be covered in the upcoming lectures that we'll have, so I won't dwell too long on them. And hopefully you'll pick up a few tips of things that you can add into your lives starting from today. So the first stop that I'll make is on nutrition. So nutrition is the study of the foods that can help our bodies to function at their best. Apologies, that says help. That's supposed to say help. And this is a very complex area. There's lots of debate in nutrition, but we know that there are some general principles when we really honestly look at the health studies about what are the best foods to eat. So what are the criteria? So for good foods, we want them to be able to provide the building blocks that our body needs for its everyday processes and for providing energy. We also want to have we want that food to provide essential nutrients that the body itself cannot make or doesn't have or can't make enough of. So we know that vitamins and minerals are essential. Our body doesn't make these. So iron, calcium, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and water. And you also want these to be in good balance. So if you have too much of one thing, it doesn't give you optimal nutrition. So we believe and we know that there is a diet that, unlike medication, can be helpful for all different types of illnesses and for all our organs. So a lot of the medications that we use, which are helpful in certain conditions, tend to focus on one organ. So for example, you might be on something called a statin, and that's helping to reduce your cholesterol level. You might be on something called an ACE inhibitor, ramipril. Those kind of medications are helping the blood pressure or the kidneys. So they act on one particular area. But there is a diet, and we know that there are diets that actually help all areas of the human body. So the heart, the lungs, they can prevent cancer, prevent diabetes. Also, we want a diet that doesn't have side effects. But one of the positive things about the diet I'm going to suggest is that it can even treat the underlying cause of the illness, and in some cases reverse or put certain conditions into remission. And what is that? So research shows that a whole food plant-based diet does meet a lot of those criteria. So what is this whole food plant-based diet? It's made up of unrefined plant foods. It limits meat, dairy, eggs, limits processed foods as well. And we know that the more plant foods we add into our diet, the more benefits we're able to reap from those plant foods. But also, if we add more plant foods, we can be able to displace or remove the less healthier options. So we're going to learn more about this, and Chilla is going to be teaching us quite a lot on nutrition starting from next week. So I'd really encourage you to join the program next week to learn a little bit more detail about what to do. From today, a few suggestions I could add are add an extra serving of fruit or vegetables that you like into your meals. Maybe choose a meal a day or a meal a day a week where you don't have meat for your meals, and we'll learn the reasons why in more details later on. And then when you're snacking, try to choose a healthier option like nuts or an apple or chopped vegetables. The next stop is going to be exercise. And again, we're going to have a separate talk on this as well in 2 weeks' time. So our bodies need to be physically active to meet the stresses and demands of day-to-day life. And exercise itself has got many benefits. One of them is weight control. It can help to reduce your stress as well, because as you exercise, you release chemicals which are called endorphins, which act on the brain pathways to calm your body and to reduce stress. It can boost your immune system. And also because it increases the circulation in the body, and it can also reduce your risk of heart disease, cancer, and even an early death. And it's important for us to schedule activity because we're no longer as active as as past populations would have been. We're much more sedentary now in the kinds of jobs that we do. It's also important, especially for older people who are not working and not going to school, to schedule activity and ensure that they're getting the recommended amounts of activity, and choose activities that you enjoy. So briefly, I'll just go through one of the guidelines that's suggested by the Irish Heart Foundation, and most of the other medical bodies suggest this as well. So the minimum is 30 minutes of exercise or activity, so moderate physical activity, at least 5 days a week. This is the minimum. So if you're able to, you're encouraged to push that to an hour or even an hour and a half. And in younger children, they need at least an hour of exercise every single day. And this moderate exercise means that you can just about hold a conversation when you're doing that form of physical activity, but you can always build it up slowly. So if you're not active, you can build it up slowly to that recommended amount. Include some muscle strengthening activities, and we'll learn a little bit more about that in the coming session. And also, older adults should aim to have some specific exercises that involve balance to reduce your risk of falls. And that's about 2 or 3 times a week as well. So we'll definitely learn a little bit more about that in the coming weeks. The other stop we'll make is on water. So water is something, drinking water is something we don't always think about, but our bodies are made up about 60% of water, and next to air, water is one of the most important elements needed for survival. We can go about 2 months without food, but only a few days without water. And one of the advantages of water is that it has no calories. So you can drink it at any time of the day. It's not going to affect your blood sugar levels. And if anything, it can stop you from eating foods or drinking other drinks that might not be helpful for you. So we need water inside our bodies. That's by drinking it, because water is needed for the removal of waste. So that's through our urine, our sweat, and also our breathing. We get rid of our carbon dioxide, and it's mixed in water for it to come out. Water is also needed for some of the chemical reactions that happen in your body, so digestion and metabolism. So metabolism is the making energy from the food that we eat. It's also used for transporting nutrients and oxygen, so that's through the blood. It's also helpful for cooling the body. So when we sweat, we lose heat with the water, and that cools our body when we've done any exercise or activities. And it's very important for the lubrication of the joints, because in between the joints, you've got a small gap, which is called synovial fluid, and that has got water in it. And sometimes if you're not well hydrated, it can contribute to joint problems. So the guidelines are that a healthy person should take about 8 glasses of water a day. That's about 240 mils, or 8 ounces if you use ounces. This varies, obviously. In hotter weather, you should drink more water, or if you've done any exercise. And in certain illnesses, so if you're having a fever or a cough, you're going to be losing much more water through that. You can sometimes lose up to about a pint of water from coughing and also from breathing. So you need to replace that water. One of the guidelines is that your urine should look slightly straw colored, so a pale yellow color. If it's darker, it might suggest that you need to drink more water, but don't drink water until your urine looks like water itself. There are certain conditions, so heart conditions, kidney conditions, where your water intake needs to be restricted. And if you've been advised to restrict your water by your doctor, then you just need to talk to them about how much you need to take and how to balance that with some of your other activities. If you're a very active person, or in a hot climate, for example. But not only do we need water inside our bodies, we also benefit from water outside our bodies. And water has got many healing properties. We know, like from COVID, there was a lot of studies which were shown that people who did contrast showers or contrast baths, or putting contrast foot baths, had slightly improved recovery from COVID or other respiratory illnesses. It was found, for example, people in countries like Finland, where they have the saunas and the cold water dips after having a sauna, they had slightly lower risks of respiratory illnesses. So these are techniques that one can learn and read more about, and see how they can use water on the skin to in healing your body. Also contrast showers, so where you start with a hot shower and then switch to cold, have been seen in some cases to also improve your moods as well. It's also important just for general cleaning, because our body releases waste through our skin, which is the largest organ actually of the body. So it's important to have a daily shower or a bath or a wash to get rid of that waste. The next stop is sunlight. Sunlight is lovely, it's warm. I don't know if we've had lovely sunny days these last couple of weeks. I hope you've had the same over there in Ireland as well. So I'm just going to share a couple of things. Again, this will be touched on in some of the upcoming talks. I just wanted to share a study about sunshine. So often we think of sunshine and we associate it with vitamin D, which is right. But because when the sun hits our skin, a cholesterol molecule is converted to vitamin D, and the kidney and also the liver ultimately produce this. But there was this a study that was done during COVID times, again, from the British Journal of Dermatology, showed that people who were exposed to higher levels of sunshine seemed to have a lower risk of death from COVID-19. And this was a study done in 3 countries. This is just an association, so we don't know the exact pathways or how it happens. But what they feel one of the pathways could be that we have a product called nitric oxide, which is produced in the skin after you have ultraviolet exposure from sunlight. And this nitric oxide can reduce your blood pressure. We know that it does that in the body. And a reduction of the blood pressure reduces your chances of having a more severe COVID-19 and other illnesses. So this is one pathway where sunshine may reduce deaths from COVID, which is not associated with vitamin D. But vitamin D in itself is very important because it helps with our bone health, and we'll have a specific talk about our bone health in the coming couple of weeks. Also, exposure to sunshine has been seen to counteract seasonal affective disorder. So this is where people's mood dips a little in the winter months. Having sunshine in the morning can also improve your mood, your well-being, and even your cognitive performance, so just how you think. And this is also very important for younger people. And a study was done where patients who had bipolar depression were exposed to bright light therapy at midday, and this was found to benefit them, their mood, and also improve their sleep as well. As I said, sunshine is important for our bones because vitamin D helps with putting calcium into the bones, and also improves our muscle strength as well. So how much sunshine do we need? We would need to have about 20 to 30 minutes of sunshine exposure when the sun is overhead. In countries which are more northern, so Ireland, the UK, of course, all the Nordic countries and other parts of the world, in wintertime, the sun is never really overhead. So in those cases, we're advised to take vitamin D supplement. If you have any concerns about medical problems, where you might have a risk of maybe having too much vitamin D, it's important to just check that with your own GP. But the guideline of about 400 to 800 units a day of vitamin D is usually safe for most people. And when you're out in the sun, of course, when it's hotter in the summer, or if you're visiting a hotter climate, make sure you protect your skin by wearing a sunscreen and a hat as well. One of the things that's important in our health is having a good balance of activities that we do that promote our health. So we have to combine good things that promote our health in a good balance. So, for example, food is healthy for us, but if we have too much of it, that's not in a good balance. But also, it's important to abstain completely from things that are destructive to our health or harmful. Often we think of total balance, or this word which we could use an old word, temperance, as having everything in moderation. But we know that things that are destructive to our health should not be included in our lifestyles at all. And this ranges from what we eat, what we drink, some of our habits, and activities that we need to choose activities that increase our quality of life and promote our well-being. Again, we're going to have a talk specifically about this and talking about areas of our lives where people can go completely out of balance, so having addictions, say to things like drugs, alcohol, and tobacco, and how we can avoid getting that way, but also how you can treat people who unfortunately fall into substance misuse. So we can be out of balance for a number of things. As I said, food, for example, sometimes exercise is good for us, but if we do too much exercise, we can end up injuring ourselves. Media, for example, is good, but we know now that too much media exposure can also have harmful effects. Another aspect, so point number 6, I've got two more to go, is air. So we know that air is very important. So as we said, we can live without food for about a few weeks. We can live a few days without water, but we can only live about a few minutes without air. And it's one of the most important bodily functions that we have. We need good quality air and good quality breathing. So if we take nice, good, deep breaths, that can improve our memory, our concentration, lower our stress levels, and also improve our sleep. And good quality air can be found in areas which are close to rivers, waterfalls, beaches, forests, and also outdoors. If you're not able to access that, then and you're not close to a busy street, for example, you can open your windows to get nice, fresh air. And a breathing exercise that you can try yourself, and this could be done a few times in the day. It's very good to do that early in the morning as you're waking up, is to sit upright, breathe through your nose for 4 counts, and then hold your breath for 6 counts, then breathe out slowly for 8 counts, and repeat that 4 to 6 times. Be careful not to do it too fast, because some people can end up getting a bit dizzy, so don't do it more than that. Just to check if you're breathing adequately, you can put your hand on your tummy, on your abdomen, and make sure you push your abdomen out as you're breathing in, and that's a good sign to show that you're lowering your diaphragm and opening up your chest nice and wide. So that's an exercise that you can try. You can also do that when you're feeling a little bit stressed as well, as you increase your oxygen into your brain and you're able to think a bit more clearly. A very important aspect in taking charge of your health is having rest. So there's kind of 3 types of rest that I can quickly look at. So one is the daily rest that we have. So that's the sleep. The weekly rest, that's in a lot of people take a day out in the week to have time to with their family, with friends, maybe time out in nature. Some people also choose to worship. And all these forms of rest are beneficial for your health, because it's a time to reset and for your body to recharge for the activities that come ahead. It's also important to have longer holidays, and most countries in Europe, especially in Ireland and the UK, I'm sure have good what's called annual leave, where you get time off work to go for longer holidays. And these again are very important for recharging and making sure your body's in balance for the activities that you need. Sleep is very important. This is the daily rest that we mentioned, and it's something that often we don't get enough of. I'll just touch on a couple of those points. So one of the things that we need to remember is that our body is actually metabolically active when we're sleeping, and we sometimes think our body is completely asleep and nothing's happening. But when we're sleeping, free radicals, which is damage that happens during the day, is actually cleared off through the lymphatic system, and this happens in the brain and also in the body as well. And the guidelines, I won't go through them in detail. But adults should have at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep. It varies for children depending on their age. But if you notice there, even our 18-year-olds should be having nearly 10 hours of sleep a day. And I won't share the sleep tips. I won't go through those in details. We're slightly running a bit late. But you can find some of these as well in the handouts that you have about how to have better sleep. So the last tip there is having trust relationships. And this is very important in our health. So often we think about physical things, our food, our diet, our exercise, but our social relationships are very, very important in maintaining good health. And the relationships that we have are the relationships that we have with each other, so our family and our friends. It's important to try and help others. and to practice what's called benevolence. And there is a paradox that a lot of us know, that when you help somebody, sometimes you find that you actually get more than what you have given out when you're helping. But in that, we still also have to have balance. So you have to be able to help others, but make sure that you're able to meet your own needs as well as the needs of others. So if that balance is broken, then that can be detrimental to your health as well. And we know that people who are in healthy social networks are able to sometimes make those healthier choices, to eat better, to in a group, it's much easier to exercise when you're in a group, if you've got those healthy social networks as well. One aspect is, apart from having a healthy social network with other friends, spirituality is a very important part of our well-being. And various studies have shown that people who have spiritual practices have improved memory. There are some studies as well that show that even illness itself is reduced in those who have regular spiritual practices. And this can be through meditation, prayer, even taking time to read books of inspiration. And this has shown that it makes people more socially aware, it reduces anxiety, depression, and stress as well. A study that was done in Canada, looking at kind of slightly older people for quality of life, showed that people who had prior religious activity and spirituality over time had slower cognitive decline in patients with Alzheimer's. So often with all these health decisions, it can feel overwhelming, and we need to find ways to be motivated to make those healthier choices. And as you think of how to improve your health, think of the things that will motivate you. For some people, it could be wanting to have more energy to do the things that you enjoy. For others, it could be maybe wanting to lose weight so you can feel better about yourself. Maybe you want to live long and want to live long and healthy. And sometimes we just want to feel better in general and have some control in our lives. And this is very important, because when we have something to keep us motivated, it will help us to stick to some of the goals that we want to make. I'm just going to share a story about a lady called MAVIS Green. Some of you may have heard about her. And this is a bit of motivation and interest. So she was a 62-year-old woman who was overweight, very inactive, and was going through a time when she was getting lots of pneumonia and various illnesses. And at the time, she heard a lecture. This is in the United States, in California, and the lecturer went through a few health tips and encouraged the participants to take charge of their health, because your body is, as some people say, you are the CEO of your body, so you should take charge of your health. So she started with simple things. She just decided she was going to start walking. So she started walking around her block, 5 minutes every day, as far as she could go. And slowly she progressed to walking faster, then realized that she could actually start running. And this was at age 62. When she reached age 40, her son signed her up into a marathon, and she managed to train and run a marathon for her first marathon at age 70. From then on, she did 75 more marathons. And when she had a test at age 60, they found that her heart and lungs were functioning at the level of a 22-year-old. She had to stop running marathons in about age in her 90s. But she eventually lived up to the healthy age of 104. So this story is just to show us that often we hear all these health things and think, oh, well, I've missed the boat now, I'm too old, I'll never be able to improve. But taking those small steps, and it's, we're not all going to be running marathons, but choosing something in your life that you can change to improve your health is always a good step. So we need to commit to making steps to improve our health. And the way we can do that is find out more information, find out more about it. So I've gone through these things very, very quickly, and there is much more that you can find out. So before you maybe make a change, read about it a little bit, understand it, and then see if it's something that you can do. I would encourage you to join the upcoming talks that are in the series. There's a lot of them. So as I said, we're going to be covering exercise, nutrition, looking at cancer, for example. We're going to look at how stress can impact our bodies and our health. Talking a little bit more about our relationships and our families, and how we can have better self-esteem. There's also, as I said before, we're talking about drugs, alcohol, and addictions, and how we can reverse and come out of some of those problems. So there's a lot of information that's there that you can be able to use in the upcoming talk. So maybe that's a step that you will take to commit to joining the upcoming talks as well. And as you review the lecture and review the notes, look at one of the suggestions and one of the tips that I've gone through and see if there's one thing there. It could be doing more exercise. It could be adding more fruit to your diet. It could be strengthening your relationships with your family and friends. Any one of those. Take one small step today, and hopefully we'll all be able to have healthier lives. So thank you for listening.